Well, when you're in Melbourne and you're watching cricket at the MCG, there's really one person who sums up everything that is all of that, and that is Gideon Haigh, journalist, cricket writer, a man who has possibly the biggest vocabulary in the world. Do you ever have to use a thesaurus, kids?
Oh no, that's cheating. No.
So he has a big vocabulary. Me, I sit there and go, it was a good shot. Thesaurus, good. He doesn't have to do that.
I've done it for a lot of years. You have to come up with a lot of adjectives for the word hit.
Luckily, there are a lot in cricket. Well, you're here at the Boxing Day Test, thank goodness, with crowds.
Yeah.
After a tough year, there's something this special in Australian sporting, I guess, legend or the collective consciousness must be huge for you.
Particularly as a Melburnian, when we've missed out on so much. You know, we've been the capital city hardest hit by COVID-19, and we lost our AFL Grand Final to Brisbane. The Melbourne Cup proceeded without a crowd. The Spring Racing Carnival was, held in sort of hermetically sealed conditions. 6 to 8 weeks ago, we thought, well, it might not be a Melbourne Test match at all. But now we could get 3. So it never rains but it pours, and that's actually a good axiom for living in Melbourne.
Yeah, there is a danger. We just felt a little spit of rain there. That's perfect Melbourne analogy. But so, what about you personally? Your connection to the Boxing Day Test. What's the first one you can remember?
I came to the first one, the very first one, or the first one to start on Boxing Day, which was Boxing Day '74. Which was a huge crowd, the biggest crowd I'd ever been in, easily, and one of the biggest I've ever been in since. An England-Australia Test match. The very first day I came with the family of a friend of mine, and what amazed me about the MCG, and I think it amazes all people who come to for the first time, is the sheer scale of the ground. It's a football ground, really. Predominant usage now is for AFL, so it conduces to the very, very large crowds that we have for that game. But here you get something on an uncompromising scale. And if you're a child, you're accustomed to everything being scaled down to your proportions. Here was something that was very adult and something to live up to. I can remember my first sort of close-up sight of a cricketer was Doug Walters running back from gully to chase a ball to third man, and he turned, stooped and threw into the distant wicketkeeper, and I thought that was just huge. That was massive. This is what life is really like outside the relatively cloistered environment of my country town home in Victoria. So it was my introduction to Boxing Day cricket, but maybe it was also my induction in the adult world, in the sizes and proportions of that. Then I came to the '77 Test match here, which was the first time I'd seen India play live, and I was side on to the bowlers that day. It was the Test match Indian fans might remember, where Chandra got 6 for 52 in each innings and got a duck in each innings too. Beautiful symmetry about that. But he bowled, in a way that I don't think anyone else has ever bowled in cricket. These incredibly fast, whippy googlies. At the other end, Bishan Bedi tossing up these beautiful, artful parabolae to the Australian batsmen, who grew increasingly perplexed and confounded by it. And up until then, I think my cricket education had been in terms of fast bowling and hard hitting. To see the Indian team for the first time was to be introduced to all the subtler, slower, more graceful cricketing arts, and I guess that's what I've identified Indian cricket with, rightly or wrongly, since.
You did miss one, I believe, match that India played here, but you still got a pretty special experience with the team.
Yeah, well, it was the 80-81 tour, which was the second match that India won in Melbourne. I didn't get to go to that because it was a late summer Test match and I'd gone back to school. But the Indian side toured Geelong, my hometown, and for the first and really last time in my life, I actually went around collecting autographs on my copy of Maurice Goldsworthy's Encyclopedia of Cricket. I got every member of that Indian team, and I spoke to everyone, and they were grace personified, delightful guests of this country. I remember particularly telling Syed Kiamani that we had the same birthday. I remember talking to Roger Binney about the fact that he opened the batting and the bowling for Karnataka. He was very flattered that I seemed to know that. I met Vishy. Gundapa Vishwanath was a very great hero of mine. He made a century in that Melbourne Test. Wonderful, wonderful player. The New Zealand team had come to Geelong earlier that season. They weren't anywhere near as nice. I know.
Hang on.
Extraordinary. I know. Complete paradigm shift there. But they seemed rather brusque and rather standoffish. But the Indian team, I think because they didn't tour Australia all that often, were really graceful guests. And it was a great game of cricket and a wonderful occasion. And I've always felt very fondly towards Indian teams coming to Australia because they were rare, they were unusual, they were quite exotic in my childhood. You read a lot about Indian cricket, but you very, very seldom saw it. You didn't get test matches broadcast from the subcontinent, so your encounters with the team were that much more special.
And so obviously they won that test
They did,
at Boxing Day, which you weren't here for. But of course, the last time they won a test, I think they've won 3 of the tests here at the MCG, was only a couple of years ago, which I can say I was there. Well, hey, go my history. But who is it? Who is it in the current crop, even just around world cricket? Is there anyone you really love watching? Because you talk about those feelings as a child.
Yeah.
Can you have those kinds of attachment and that feeling of awe once you're actually a cricket writer and have been for a long time?
Well, it's funny. I'm one of the cricket writers who doesn't like to get too close to the players. I like to observe them from far away. I like to keep a distance. I like to study them with a certain air of detachment. And hence I feel a certain an affinity for them that's not coloured by personal experience, which I quite like. You know, I've never met Kohli, but I love watching him. He absolutely lights up a room. He lights up every ground that he walks into. And as a journalist, I love writing about him because, you know, if it's a quiet day, all you have to do is look at Kohli, and he'll give you a story by some gesture, by some enactment. His enthusiasm and his love of the game and his athleticism and his prowess is absolutely infectious. If you love cricket, you have to love Kohli. I love watching Pujara. You know, it was a great test match here a couple of years ago where you got to watch sort of wall-to-wall Pujara. He played the defining innings of that game. Love watching Bumrah too. That inerasable smile of his as he walks back from his to his mark. It's as though he just still can't quite believe that he's fortunate enough to be playing international cricket. There's something very engaging about that. I'm really looking forward to watching Shubman Gill. One of my mates at the Yarras, Tejas Balaraman, he's a massive Shubman Gill fan. I met him before play yesterday, and he was so excited. He just was praying that India would win the toss. He'd get to watch Gill bat all day. He got to watch a bit of him last night, and he actually emailed me yesterday evening and saying, you know, I just can't wait for tomorrow. He said it was the best day of Test cricket he'd ever watched. And it's unusual to say that, isn't it? On a day where not a lot of runs were scored, not a lot of great individual feats, but a tremendous tension, a sense that every run had to be fought for, that the game could break open at any point. And advantage India. Really enjoyed it. And after the shambles of Adelaide, it's not that we weren't expecting it, but it's fantastic how teams these days, cricket is so explosive, but teams are actually quite resilient. They can put themselves back together again and come out the next day as though nothing's happened.
Yeah, do you feel about these two sides in the series? Because just having watched it, you feel like you've got two sides that have have really good bowling attacks, but that have flawed batting lineups, and the side maybe that can just overcome that with a few partnerships and a few good innings, that they're going to go a long way?
Yeah, for sure. And Test cricket is always, I think, that much better when the ball is slightly in the ascendancy. Yes. Yeah, we have been cursed in Australia with a lot of very boring, flat wicket Test cricket in recent years. Yes, the 2017 Boxing Day Test match is still going on somewhere in the multiverse. It hasn't finished yet. Alistair Cook's coming up for 800, not out. You don't want to sit through matches like that. I love watching Alistair Cook bat, but you know, too much of a good thing is bad for you.
You can only see so many nurdles off the hip.
You can. Look, it was a really engaging day yesterday. There was plenty to write about, and of course, ultimately, as my colleague Peter Lawler says, we're always barracking for the yarn. We always want something to say at the end of it. So thoroughly enjoyable, and it could be a cracking series, couldn't it? Really could. We're not quite sure where it's going to take place yet, but wherever it is, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really fun day. Yesterday was incredible fun, and the last day at Adelaide was crazy. I'd be happy with a little less crazy and a bit more fun like yesterday, but we'll see how we go. Thank you so much for coming and joining me.
Always a pleasure.
I might get you back somewhere else if we're somewhere else.
If we're somewhere else, I'll do it here. I don't really mind. I'm all purpose, all weather, always available to you.
He is, and with a great vocabulary. Thanks, Gideon. Talk to you soon.